We're tracking several big stories, including an upcoming special report that fact-checks Fox News in a big way and involves Biden and Obama. So that's coming up as part of our Che Day tonight. We begin with the top story, the president moving towards putting his imprint on the Supreme Court at a moment where Democrats now say that Biden suddenly has this turning point opportunity to deliver on both substance and politics, rallying his side heading into the midterms with a big decision about who will fill the new vacancy with Justice Breyer's retirement. Breyer and Biden appearing together today, and the spotlight is on the court, which has, in its entire American history, featured just two black people as Supreme Court justices ever. That's just a fact. Both of them men. Biden famously pledging to put the first black woman on the court. And standing by that pledge, the White House telling reporters and everyone this week they will nominate a black woman. That's the plan, to deliver on the campaign vow that he made, which also echoes another candidate, Ronald Reagan, who vowed he would put a woman on the court.
The person I will nominate will be someone with extraordinary qualifications, character, experience, and integrity. And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
Now, I'm announcing today that one of the first Supreme Court vacancies in my administration will be filled by the most qualified woman I can possibly find.
Well, law turns on precedent, and that is a very prominent precedent for how presidents can mix qualifications, you heard them both reference that, with an eye on diversifying the court. It's a comparison Rachel Maddow reported on amidst some conservatives now claiming that these Reagan-esque pledges have suddenly become suspect.
When the conservative media and Republicans today have been pounding their chests and screaming about how wrong, just how wrong it is that Joe Biden made a pledge during his campaign that if he were elected, he would put an African-American woman on the Supreme Court, they really ought to be asked if they were that mad about Ronald Reagan making that same kind of promise in 1980.
Indeed, if you want to take a note of optimism that transcends the rank hypocrisy that she diagnosed, let's just say that Ronald Reagan and Joe Biden have one good thing in common. They took the power of their office and made a transparent pledge about diversifying an institution that I just showed you is woefully behind and underneath the representation of the rest of the nation. So that's what the White House is focused on today, with Breyer making that official appearance. Now, there's also some interesting signs coming out of Washington, D.C., which is so quick to tear presidents down and then build them back up. Well, the Washington class has gone from slamming Biden's position last week, especially at those press questions at the press conference, to now almost frothing over new signs of life. One nonpartisan Washington Post writer capturing the mood by saying that this court pick can now help Biden draw clear contrast with the Republicans, moving off the focus on Democratic infighting that was associated with those spending battles and tee up a much-needed Biden victory in Congress. Now, that's a projection. It's a long ways from naming a nominee to getting to that victory, but others are also pointing to a very real-world victory that's already happening today. The U.S. economy actually hitting its fastest growth rate in decades amidst Biden's stewardship and those economic packages he already won and pushed. So we just quoted Rachel. I'll tell you on this story, we're going to actually end up quoting another colleague, Joe Scarborough, who just this morning was reporting on those economic numbers and saying that Biden can excel by focusing on this more than endless internal negotiations in Congress.
He overperformed on job creation, record job creation in the first year, 5.6% growth for our economy. That's an overperformance, 3.9% unemployment. Again, incredible job there. He's sitting in a pretty good position right now if you look at the basics of this economy.
Well, class is in session, and we have two professors, Morgan State University professor Jason Johnson and NYU law professor Melissa Murray. Welcome to both of you. Jason, I want to start with that point about the economy because as Joe Scarborough, a former Republican congressman, was just saying there, and others are looking at this, it seems like a great result for a first-year president to hit at the time where he also has the wind at his back on these other stories.
Usually cash rules everything around a president, Ari, but not in this particular case. People may not feel this economic growth the way the numbers seem to be playing it out right now. Look, you could have all sorts of great things happening in the stock market. You could have all sorts of fantastic things happening with large businesses, but on people's day-to-day lives, they're still seeing gas prices go up, they're still seeing their food prices go up, and they're still concerned about the safety of their jobs. So this is no longer a raw number situation. Joe Biden's responsibility in part is to give people a sense of comfort, and money alone won't do it. I can tell you, quite frankly, that most people who I speak to, including some of my students who I just talked to earlier today, they're not thinking about larger economic numbers. They're worried about the safety of their jobs and their overall safety during COVID.
Yeah, well put and fair. And before I get to the meat and potatoes, Professor, did you want to give a grade to Jason's Wu-Tang reference?
CREAM. I like it. Cash rules everything around me. Well done, Jason.
Jason, the C
Yes,
in this
good.
case,
Dollar
the C is not a report card C. It's just a cream C for that reference. You know, you grew up on the New York crime side. Staying alive was no jive, Jason. I mean, staying alive, as you say, when inflation's eating your wages. We could go on. I won't. I'm going to hand it over to the professor. Take a look as our law professor. she mouthed don't, which is fair. Take a look, our law professors, we turn to the law. This was Justice Breyer back in the day with the president who first appointed him briefly on a jog, Bill Clinton. Take a look.
Who's faster, the judiciary or the executive? No, he's much faster. Much faster. The judiciary lasts longer. That's
They're both decent with a quip. We queued that up to show you how much time has gone by because here was Breyer speaking today back at the White House at the end of his career with this new president.
And we are now engaged in a great civil war to determine whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. See, those are the words I want. To see and experiment that next generation and the one after that, my grandchildren and their children. They'll determine whether the experiment still works. And of course, I am an optimist, and I'm pretty sure it will.
Professor?
Well, he said it himself. Justice Breyer has been the court's cockeyed optimist for a very long time. He has always had faith in institutions, always tried to be a consensus builder between the left and the right on a court that has moved very sharply to the right. And one can't help but wonder if this decision to retire, not just because of the looming midterms, but because perhaps he sees the writing on the wall that this might not be the time for consensus building. There might be no opportunity for consensus building on a court that is clearly tilted toward the right with a 6-3 conservative supermajority.
Yeah, that's fair. You look at this pledge, and I showed what Rachel and others have said about it to diversify the court. And Professor, I'll remind viewers, you're raising the next generation of legal thinkers here. Law is a profession that relates to who runs the country. If you look in the Congress, it's the most overrepresented profession. We know the power that judges have. We live under these rules, whether that's ultimately who decides whether there's a right to choice or how police are overseen. And yet it remains incredibly, as we pointed out on the show, incredibly imbalanced, unrepresentative system. ABA says under 5% of lawyers are black, for example. It's very expensive these days to go to law school. The judiciary, even less so. I'm going to show you, even Obama, who talked about diversifying and did it in certain ways, but on federal judgeships overall, I'm not sure people realize this. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Just how few black women are on the federal courts writ large. I'm talking all of them, not just the Supreme Court. Obama put one black woman, partly because there were so few around at the time who I mentioned who were in lower courts. Trump did 0. Here's what Biden has done in 1 year. Of course, those other comparisons, they had more years. He's already put 8 on the court at the federal level, and he says he'll do that on the Supreme Court. Could you talk to us, Professor, for those who may not be aware of these disparities, just what that means?
There's a huge disparity. Women have, of course, been matriculating in law schools at the same rate as men for some time. But leaving aside the whole question of intersectionality and race and gender, even women are not reaching the top of the profession, the highest echelons of the profession. And for Black women, it's even more acute. We are starkly underrepresented in the ranks of general counsels. We are starkly underrepresented in the ranks of equity partners at large law firms. We are starkly underrepresented in academia. And I can say that from personal experience. So there is room to diversify at all levels of the legal profession. And I feel like I need to call out one of my fantastic NYU students, Talia Scott, who has founded her own nonprofit, Legally Black, to help young women, young Black women going to law school to prepare for that process and to be successful in it. And she's absolutely phenomenal. We're very lucky to have her doing that kind of work.
Well, thanks for telling us about that, too. That's at a very individual, specific level. Shout out to that. Jason, your thoughts, because I emphasize this because there's a thing in life and definitely in policy where people think they know something and then they start talking based on what they think they know. And I always would say respectfully, cool, let's make sure you know what you think you know is right or not. And I think I'm going to put that chart back up on the screen one more time because this is the news and these are facts. Even recent history, even President Obama not able to really dent this. Clearly, both Joe Biden and the people around him in the White House counsel's office and the other places doing the vetting, it would appear they care about this, Jason.
Yeah, they care about it, and they should. Or I mean, look, the practicality is, if you want a judiciary that is remotely reflective of the country that we have, then you should have more Black women on the judiciary. You should have more Black men on the judiciary. You should have more people on the judiciary that didn't come out of top 5 law schools. These are all things that are necessary. If the people who are facing crimes and facing our criminal justice system, heck, people who are just dealing with fraud cases and environmental cases, they're all coming from different kinds of backgrounds. So we should have a judiciary that's reflective of that. But I have to make this point because this is the thing that concerns me. As much credit as we want to give Joe Biden, and as great as it is that he's put these women on the bench, the fact of the matter is we are still, as Melissa has mentioned, we're still facing a situation with a supermajority on the court. Even if he puts a Black woman on the court, it is still 6-3, unless he thinks in a much more expansive way about maybe expanding the court or changing some of the processes for how you put people on the court. We will still face this supermajority because everybody that Trump and Republicans have put on was basically a second-year law student, and those guys are going to be on the bench for the next 40 years.
They are young. That's definitely true. I appreciate both of you giving us perspective and widening, I think, some of the perspective, because this is a heady time as we look at the future of the court. These seats come up rarely, and really interesting to see the push for change. Jason and Melissa, my thanks to both of you